Hello everyone, and welcome to my video. Today we're going to be learning about strings more in depth. I mentioned them in my previous video, but we're going to go into more detail about them now. So these are all strings right here. You can really put anything as long as there's quotes surrounding it, whether that be double or single. It doesn't matter, although you should really just pick one and stick with it throughout an entire program. That way it looks nice and neat. And another thing you should never do is mix. This is another reason why you shouldn't. This will not work. If I continue typing after this, it's still a string. Because if I type outside of the string, it's white, but it's still inside the string. So this will cause you errors in your program. It has to be the same on both ends. So something I showed y'all on my previous video is how to print strings. And if you haven't watched that, I suggest you go back and do. But another thing you can do is, because we also covered variables, is we can assign strings to a variable and then print that variable. And so let's go ahead and do that. And there we have it. It is printed in the shell. Welcome. And we don't include quotation marks because this is a variable and not a string. It's just this variable has stored in it the actual string itself. So make sure you don't put quotation marks when printing a string. So if you want a string that's over multiple lines, then we can create a multi-line string here. We start it with 3 double, or you can do single. I'm just going to use double because that's what I'm used to. At the start and at the end, and it'll let you do like as many lines. We can have like 3, or we can have none between that, but it just covers more lines. So then if we have it run joke, then it'll print it in multiple lines. And it's useful to have this if you're printing like long lines of maybe even paragraphs, because you don't want it all in one line, because you know no one's going to want to have to read one line, and it'll actually cut. If we actually have a really long line, I'll show you this by adding a bunch of spaces. Then when we run it and the shell isn't big enough, it just cuts it wherever it ends. So if that's like in the middle of a word, then you're just gonna have it cut in the middle of the word, and you don't want that sometimes. So it's easier to just use a multi-line, and it makes your code neater. But if we want to change this variable later in our program, then we could add like something else using the same variable. But what will happen now is instead of printing this first one, when we run it, it'll print the second, because we changed it. So we can reuse variables. It's just you're gonna lose whatever information you last stored in it. So, you know, we could have like this right here, and then like somewhere else in the code we could change it and then reprint it. And so if we run it this time, then it'll print the first one, and then it's changed and it'll print the second one. So I'm going to teach you how to now format lines. We're going to start with a single line, because that's a harder one. So if we want to include quotations inside of here, then we can do one of two things. First of all, we can change the outside of the print, and it'll kind of just ignore everything between these two if we want to do that. But I don't like to change it because, again, in most other parts of the program, I'm going to use double quotes and it's just going to look weird. So another way is to use the backslash on both things. And so the backslash is kind of like ignore the special ability of whatever comes like right after me. So, and just to show you, if we run the program like this, then we have invalid syntax error. See, it's like, hey, you just have this randomly in the middle of the program. But if we add our backslashes in and we save it and run it, then it prints it like normal. And so formatting with multi-line is actually a lot easier just because it's not 3. They have to be 3 consecutive. So it's like, hey, you know, it's like reading along. It's like not the end, not the end, and then it sees 3, and it's like, okay, now I'm at the end. So if we have it like this, then we could run it just like that, and it would be fine. Also, actually, funny enough, I find these jokes online, but this right here is not valid syntax. As you can see, we have lowercase, and if we change that to uppercase, it's no longer an actual command. So just for I don't know, programming sake, we're going to change that to lowercase. If you don't want to bother with multi-line strings, but you still want breaks in it, another thing you can do is \n. So \n is a command that will just make it'll make a break in the thing. So, and as you can see, if we run the program, it'll make a break just in the lines. It'll it's like it reads along, prints everything, and when it sees \n, it hits enter. But the next thing that I'm going to show you is operators, and what these guys do is they allow you to print, like, if you want to repeat something over and over again, they'll allow you to do that. So if I just have hello, and I put an asterisk right there, which is also the Python mathematical symbol for like multiplication. When I do 3, then it's going to print hello 3 times. So if I run that, hello, hello, hello. But as you can see, there's no like break. So if you wanted to have spacing, then you could also add a \n into that, and then when you run it again, you'll get hello, hello, hello. So another thing we can do is we can add like 2 variables together. For example, why do pythons live on land? Because it's above sea level. By using this. Although if we run it right now, what'll happen is there's no space. So what you need to make sure to do is either add a space at the end here, or add a space at the beginning here. I prefer to add spaces at the end of things, but if we run it again, then we will have a nice space right there. So another thing we can do is we can add variables into the middle of things. For example, this is animal, but you could maybe ask the user, what's your favorite animal, and then add it into the middle of here. But you need to make sure you have spaces, because again, unless the variable has spaces, which typically it doesn't, you're going to have to add your own in before the string. So if we run that, it just puts it all together. Why did the Python cross the road? Another thing you could do is if you just want to put it directly into here, you can use, which I prefer this method, it's called f-string. So you put an F just before the string, and what you can do is you can get rid of this whole middle part, and you can use curly brackets and put in animal. And if you make something an f-string, then when it sees curly brackets, it says whatever in here is a variable or whatever, and it then goes and it finds it. And so if we run that, we get the same result as the other one. But I prefer this because if you're dealing with numbers, in order to print numbers, you gotta like turn them into strings instead of them being numbers, but it does all that formatting for you. So this is just like a little way to do everything quicker, which I only learned this like a while after I was programming. So when I finally discovered it, I was like, oh my gosh, why was I never taught this? So this has helped me out a lot. So I said earlier how we could maybe ask the person what their favorite animal was, and if you want to do that, you're gonna have a variable, but instead you're gonna put input, and then kind of view it as a print command, but at the end it'll, you know, it'll allow the player to input something, and it'll store that input in animal. So we input, what is your favorite animal? And I always like to add like a colon at the end to symbol, you know, like enter here. So if we run that, Then it asks, what's your favorite animal? And I'm just going to put Python. And then it just adds it in. And to improve our code a little, because what if they capitalize their animal, then just in the middle of the sentence right here, it'll just have a capital letter. We can put animal equals animal dot lower. And so it's gonna find this variable before it redefines it here. So this will be fine. You could even name it something else if you want to, like animal 2. But just make sure to change this to animal 2, otherwise it'll do the first one. So, but I just reuse the same one because I'm just permanently changing it. But if we run that program, then what is your favorite animal? If I capitalize it here, then it prints that. And if we run it again, just to show y'all something, I can even do mixed case. So if I type it like this, then it just makes it all lowercase. And if we have a scenario like this where we want whatever they're going to input to be capital because it's going at the beginning of a sentence, we can do animal equals animal dot capitalize, and we got to make sure to put the parentheses at the end because it's a function, and I covered those somewhat in my last video, and I'll go into more depth on them in another video. But a lot of these built-in things are functions, like the print command. They all just use parentheses. But if you forget the parentheses, it's not going to work. So you got to make sure to include those. Same with lower. But if we want to run it, and I type in Python all lowercase, then it's going to make it uppercase. And if you didn't notice, I had this S on the outside that made it plural. And I'm going to briefly touch on 2 other ones. They're not as, I would say, useful, but they are upper, which makes all the letters uppercase. If I demonstrate real quick, Python all lowercase, and it makes it all upper. And there's also, if I can grab just that word, there's also swap case, which this will just swap the case of whatever you input. If I do it like this and hit enter, it just swaps the cases. Anything lowercase becomes uppercase, and anything uppercase becomes lowercase. Alright, so back here real quick, and I just wanted to show y'all some other ways you could use .lower if you wanted to save space. For example, you can just add it at the end of this right here, and it'll make it lowercase. If we run that, and we do Python, then it makes it lowercase again, and same with all the other ones. I'm just doing it with lower as the example. You can also put it just right here inside the brackets to do the change. If we run that, and I'll show you, then if I type in like that, it'll change it to lower again. That's going to be all for today. I hope you learned something. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.